Yeah, I agree.
National Grid had what, 7,000,
Oh, yeah, it was more Worcester.
Yeah, Worcester.
Yeah, they got involved in Western Mass. But
Oh, yeah.
It's
It's a large territory. Old infrastructure.
People just know,
Yeah.
Western, or Central Mass, northern part of the Central Mass. Crazy. Like upstate New York used to be, lake effect, so.
Yeah.
So there, you could be 3 or 4 miles and you'd be a difference of a foot
Right.
in terms of snow.
Yeah.
And it always snows.
Rochester used to be that way, all the lake effect, so lake effect, crazy, yeah.
The guys were waiting for some action. They said, something's gonna happen. They said, pray nothing is gonna happen.
Exactly.
Come on.
That's right. Come on, don't you wanna get out
Something
there?
to happen. You sent one of your guys out to this thing, a line down this road.
That's right.
Go check that transformer.
Yeah.
So 2 days ago, I got a guy who does plowing, he comes in, are you doing your snow dance? I need revenue.
Yeah. We had a couple of cable fittings.
Oh, there you go. Underground?
Underground cable fittings.
Oh, this is horse.
Just completely randomly at the same exact time,
Wow.
that they both went out, and, I don't know, and, that was, that had a whole different element to it.
Mostly the H cables, right? Like,
Yeah.
I said it was old.
Old,
Underground,
old
yeah.
underground lead cable, and bailed
No,
out the
those
storm.
The lead joints, those are the hot string ones.
Yeah.
They crack and then moisture
Water
gets in.
Water gets in, and then.
Those are, wow.
Live on the water anyway, but just whatever. Boom. One on Monday and then one late,
Wow.
earlier.
So we'll give Dave a few more minutes to come.
Yeah, he's always a little bit late.
It is 7:30.
But we do have a forum, so it's okay now, so.
Yeah, I'll give Dave a couple more minutes, Step without him.
What kind of cable was this? Not cable, like extended or anything, right?
No, it's just, it's a little that big. It's only about 3 copper wires.
Oh, really?
I've already been there 60 years, and then all of a sudden it just decides that.
Really?
Enough.
It's a time to go.
And it wasn't like saltwater related or anything else, it was just like, just old.
Well, and it happens all the time, that, daily basis, things just
I didn't realize
fail,
that.
underload.
Yeah.
They just pop. And they're like, you hear the manhole fires in Boston.
Yes,
And a lot of
right.
times that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
that goes on, and then you go up to go find it, turn it off, and you find it.
Right.
Much more
You
difficult.
smell the baked ice burning or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
You track it with your nose.
You find it dead dogs, it tells you.
Dead dogs as opposed to dead squirrels. Huh?
Exactly. Canaries, yeah.
Or like this, right in the mouth, too close.
We didn't have any, we barely found the cable.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't have cable. So,
Oh, you mean
Yeah, they actually replace it.
Wow.
Yeah. So what you do? Some utilities. The application, but just get it going.
yeah,
You have no choice.
you got no choice.
So what do you do? You have to splice it or something?
Yeah, we can put it together, but it's a,
Temporary fix probably.
yeah, it's a big polyethylene jacket
Right.
on it, like very durable and stuff.
How's that tape run
Yeah, they take the shot.
from? Electrical tape.
But it's a matter of time.
Yeah, 3 in black.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a quarter with or 1 inch with.
Yeah.
You're right here, Dave. Okay? The waiter for you.
Thank you. Just get started.
Okay.
Good to see you. Finally.
Take your coat off. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. It being 6:34, I will call the meeting of the Reading Municipal Light Board, Municipal Light Department Board of Commissioners to order. Meeting of the Reading Municipal Light Department Board of Commissioners being recorded at the RMLD office, 230 Ash Street, Reading, Mass. For distribution to community television stations in Reading, North Reading, Wilmington, and Linfield, as well as being live streamed on RCTV and YouTube. The RMLD Board of Commissioners recognizes the importance of hearing public comment at the discretion of the chair on items on the official agenda. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressing the board shall state their name and address prior to speaking. It is the role of the chair to maintain order on all public comment or ensuing discussion. Are there any remote participants yet?
Not yet, just.
Not yet. We are expecting one, the chair. I appoint myself, let me try again. I will serve as the chair and as the vice chair. I will serve as the chair until the arrival of the chair, Marlene Bitter. I also appoint myself as board secretary for this evening meeting. So first item we have on the agenda is the public comment. Nobody, no remote participants. I see no anybody else in the room. Ken, you're going to represent CAB. Do you want anything you want to bring up here?
Nothing for me.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to move to item 2. Item 3, which is the approval of the minutes. John, you want to read the motion?
Sure. Let's see here. Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve the open session meeting minutes of the October 20th, 2022 meeting on the recommendation of the general manager and the board secretary.
Bob, you second that? Second motion. Okay. Further discussion? I see none. All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We go to, we actually have a script. We didn't have no script in the
I don't want to use that script.
All right, so we have the procurements. John, you want to read that first motion and then you can give us some background?
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners authorize the general manager to award the contract for IFB 2023-03 mailing services for municipal electric bills to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, provided that the total price does not exceed $150,000 for the 3-year contract.
Second on that?
Second.
Good, Dave seconded. Hamid?
Okay, sure.
Give us some
This
background.
is for mailing services. The last time we went out to bid that in 2019, and the total price for a 3-year contract was $104,400. So this time we anticipate the bids to come out at $150,000. And the reason we're doing it now is to give the general manager the authorization to not to exceed $150,000. Is because, you know, we can't wait until the April board meeting. So we need to get this, the bid opening for this is March 22nd, and the contract date is May 1st. So there won't be enough time if you go to the board in April, wait until April for it. So that's basically the case.
Okay.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
2 things. Is there an option to extend if you cannot get bids in time and the current contract? Is there a year extension? If it does expire.
Yeah, we have 6 months. Usually we have 6 months extension. So we give them that 6 months. That's gonna give us enough time to put the bid together to go to bid for the next one.
Yeah, and then I know you have not to exceed.
So if it exceeds that amount, let's say if it goes to 170, we're gonna come at the in the board in April board meeting, and we're gonna say that that we went over by this amount. So it's completely transparent. Right?
Okay.
Should we vote on
Further, yeah, further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0. Go to the next one, John.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners authorize the general manager to award the contract for IFB 2023-25 grounds and landscape services to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, provided that the total price does not exceed $150,000 for a 3-year contract.
Hamid?
Yeah, sure. This is again the same deal. I mean, the contract run out, and we have the bid opening is going to be March 22nd. The last time that we went out to bid for this service in 2020, the 3-year contract total price was $425,283. So we expect that this one to come out to approximately $150 for the ground services. So that's the same deal.
So
Yeah,
just
so
a question.
One more thing if I may explain. We originally went out to bid on February 1st with the intention that the vendor's award would be made in March, but the RMLD decided to cancel the bid in the interest of the, RMLD and ratepayers pursuant to Chapter 30B, Section 9. As this also mirrors the far exceeded the funds available. So what we did, we notified them that none of those bids are acceptable. So now they're sharpening up their pencils, and actually this time around, we've got like about 50 people that are interested in bidding. So we anticipate the bid to come out approximately $150,000. That's what it should be. That's where it should be. So, and hopefully, with more participation, we're gonna get that amount. If the bid goes over 150, we're gonna come to like a board, that amount goes over 150. But it shouldn't. We don't expect that. Please.
Okay. What's for discussion? See none, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Can we get a second on that too?
Dave seconded. Okay. All right, John, next one, please.
For pole mounted transformers, move that IFP 2023-12 for pole mounted transformers be awarded to MVA Power Inc. for $581,061.72. Items 1 through 4 pursuant to MGL Cs 164-56D on the recommendation of the general manager.
Move back.
Yeah, sure. This is the Chapter 164 award, which means we don't have to go by the lowest bidder. We should go with the one that fits our model and actually with the more qualified bidder. So we sent the bids to 17 companies. We got 3 back from MVA Power, that's a Chinese company, and Howard Industries and Power Sales Group, which the shortest, actually MVA Power, the lead time is 28 to 30 weeks, as opposed to the others that have 75 weeks lead time. And in the interest of the time, and we need to get these things fast, so we have enough inventory for our transformer replacement program. So we are awarding it to, and actually they ended up being the lowest anyway. So it's MVA Power that the bid is being awarded to. And it's great. The items 1 through 4 were awarded, 5 to 8 they're not recommended because they didn't have provided enough documentation on those. So we requested, and we're gonna go the next time we're gonna go out to bid. We're gonna get items 5 to 8, which by the way we have them in the inventory, so we're not sure on that.
The question I have on this one is the bid on this one is much lower than the other 2.
Yeah.
Substantially.
Yeah.
So have you checked out this company, that there's no issues here?
Yeah, actually, one of our engineers went to the expo, TRD Expo, that was last month.
Yep.
That was not even 2 months ago. Yeah, February. So they went, and that's how they got introduced to this company. They were attending. Yeah, it's a legitimate company, and that's what they do. They do business with others. We check their background. It seems to be legitimate.
And so were there, they provide any references that we could check with?
Yes, they did. They did. Yeah.
This is a Chinese company, you say?
Yeah.
Sure, was it Korean?
I think it was Chinese. That's what it.
I thought that's what Paul was, they were Korean based.
It's a Korean base? Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, yeah, Korean base. Yeah, that's right, that's right. It was Korean base.
So it would have been a little different if
Right,
we probably would be talking differently if it was China based.
okay.
So it's Korean based company.
That's Korean base. Sorry, yeah, that was mine.
Okay, further discussion? See none, all those in favor,
Well,
please raise your
I think, considering that it is, a newer company.
Right,
A lot, where, size and scope wise, right? If you ever have to do anything that returns or anything, what's your methodology that you're gonna use to track this stuff? Because this is bread and butter.
right.
You're going Howard, you're doing everything else, you have a relationship with them, one fails, that's right, going to take it back. This is new, and,
They are coming with the warranties, so they signed the warranty papers too. They submitted as part of the bid. So if there's anything wrong with them, we just send it back, and then, they're supposed to, unless they replace the new ones. But this is the first time we're trying, so we'll see how.
But we know that they're an established company. I mean, we know what their revenues are and whatnot. Are they substantial enough so they could withstand a turn?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I don't have that information, but I can find out and get back to you. But the revenue, sure.
Should we table that one until we?
Yeah,
we should table that one.
Yeah, so, You want to move the table, John?
Yes, I would like to move to table, this particular motion for the
Okay.
IFP 2023-12 whole month of transformers into our next meeting.
Table it to the April meeting. Okay. Bob, you second that?
I second that.
Okay. All those in favor of the tabling, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Carries 4-0. And the next one.
Move that IFP 2023-13 for pad mounted transformers be awarded to Wesco Distribution Inc. for $2,116,556 pursuant to MGL 164 and 56D on the recommendation of the general manager.
Do I hear a second? Second, Bob seconded. Okay. Background?
Yeah, these are we sent a bid to 20, these are pad mounted transformers, the underground type. So we sent it to 20 companies, Howard, and 3 companies, they responded, they fully, actually, they provided all the documents needed. Howard Industries, Power Sales, and Airby. And the successful bidder was Wesco. Wesco, they submitted 2, if you look at the analysis, they did 2 submittals. One with the long lead, the Hitachi, and actually 2 of those transformers, they didn't provide any code for that. So the lead time though for those, it goes up to 149 weeks. And then the first scenario that they submitted, and the second scenario that they submitted, it had shorter lead time, 42 to 44 weeks. And the price, you could see that it is substantially, higher than the first batch, which was $1,406,121,000. So this one met all the criteria, everything that we requested without any exceptions, and came out to $2,116,556.
Just as I may, between those 2 West Coasts, as you guys, we mentioned, the top group is Hitachi, but the first 2 items, 1 and 2 were in bid.
Right.
And if you look at the 3rd box down, Wesco, number 2, where it was United Standard Electric, they did include, and that was about $1 million between the 2 of those. So the 2 bids are actually pretty close when you look, if you were to, because the top one, at the end of the day, the Hitachi ones would be a little more expensive than the United Standard Electric, but they weren't bid in the top block.
Yeah.
Small clarification. We're still recommending the Wesco using the United Standard Electric. And that is the same for RB2. They went between the 2 West Coasts.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, Bill, you're up.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Slides.
So, are you going to push buttons for him?
I've got it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to give you an overview of the Integrated Resources Department. I'll go through the key drivers, talk about the organization that we're putting into place, the planning process that we're putting into place. I'll talk to you about a hydro addition to the power supply that we have a motion on tonight, and then talk about our third quarter 2022 certificate balance. So the key drivers of the IRD are really the key drivers of RMLD as set by the general manager, and we're organizing around those 3 principles of reliable, low cost, and non-carbon power along the side. And along the top, you see market, which is outside forces, what we're doing internally in order to drive that strategy, and then how we're delivering that to the customers who are the end sources, an important part of the strategy. So in the market for reliable power, that obviously requires us to seek supply and demand balance. Internally, we need to invest in infrastructure, just like the transformers, but also we need to invest in data analytics so that we understand what is happening as this clean energy transition continues to occur. And then from a customer standpoint, we want to incent the desired behaviors of energy use, because as electrification happens, it's going to have a big impact it can have a big impact on our infrastructure. From a low cost standpoint, we're relentlessly seeking low cost source of resources. We're building out internally, we're building out the team to fully evaluate and structure contracts to deliver that as least cost power as we can. And then on the customer side, we're trying to manage the impacts as they electrify their end uses. So as they put in more heat pumps and EVs, we want to be sure that we can absorb that great increase in load demand. And from a non-carbon standpoint, we are aggressively pursuing non-carbon PPAs at a low cost. We're maximizing the potential of non-carbon generation in territory. Right now, that's pursuing as much solar as we can. And then on the customer side, customers, their rooftops are good locations for solar. So we're looking at non-carbon distributed generation with our customers, partnering with them. And that will help absorb some of the load increases that we have. So the organization that we're building out, I'm the new IRD director. We're trying to keep it as flat and responsive as possible. So we have the operational assistant that helps us organize the department. We have 2 IRD engineers, 2 IRD analysts to help us evaluate a lot of the restructuring that we need to do. We have communications and customer service under us, and then we have the specialists that help run the day-to-day programs in the organization.
One question, Bill.
Yes.
Customer service, is that the existing customer service?
That's the existing customer service.
Okay, that's not.
So
that's
and
not a
billing.
new-
No, it's
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
And all of these positions have existed, but a lot of them were refilling.
What's the status of getting those 2 open positions that I see on the chart?
We have identified 2 candidates, and we're currently have offers out, and we're waiting to hear from them. So.
Okay, good.
And one of the 2 IRD engineers positions was open until recently, and we know a lot of recruiting for IRDs. You guys know it's been tough to fill this group, but we have a new engineer will be starting next month.
27th, yeah.
27th, right? So we're filling out the IRD team, which is great.
Yeah. So we can get busy doing the planning that we have to do. So in order to meet the reliable, low-cost non-carbon power, we obviously need a process. And this is like a continuous improvement process, right? We don't stop planning it because the landscape is constantly changing. So it's forecasting what the load is going forward. That's an ongoing process. And of course, the energy efficiency and electrification programs have an impact on the load, so we need to include those in the forecasting, not only weather related. And in order to do those programs, we need to have good customer engagement, and that's through the customer service program and also through our rebate and incentive programs. Also, rate innovation is obviously where we engage with our customers the most, and we're trying to develop rates that incent the right behaviors. Certificate management of our renewable energy certificates is important because that help, until as we bring on more non-carbon resources, we'll create more certificates. And until we need to comply with the greenhouse gas emission standard, we can use the revenue from the sale of those certificates to keep rates low, which also helps us benefit to keep the cost of electrification of customers lower. So, that's why it's a circular process. All of these things have impacts on the others. And of course, securing supply resources is important that meet the forecasted demand. So on the subject of sourcing non-carbon resources, we do have the motion today for a renewal of hydro with gravity renewables. There are 2 gravity hydro contracts. One is Wire Wind and the other is Connecticut 5, we're calling it, because it's not completely. So we'll get the 100% of the output of these assets and the environmental attributes of both of the facilities.
Should we pause just for a second? You want to read the motion on this one?
Well, the background.
Keep going.
Keep going. Let's get the background from these.
Okay.
Okay, good. Keep going.
Yeah, we'll do the motion. Perfect. Okay, we'll get the questions in the motion.
Okay, good.
So the environmental justice report is complete on both of these. Wire Wind does require some fish cartridges for license renewal. So those are in the works, and we expect that to happen shortly after we execute the renewal. And although both of the facilities are in Connecticut, they are in separate watersheds, so there is some diversity of supply in case something happens to one of the watersheds. And then the volume combined is 35,000 megawatt hours a year for RMLD. So that's about 5% of the RMLD total 2024 purchases. 25,000 megawatt hours per year from Connecticut plus 10,000 megawatt hours per year from Wirewind will take the output of both facilities. So there's no change in that. The term is long, so we're securing these contracts for a long period of time for 32 years. They will end in 2055. And the certificates are Connecticut Class 1 certificates, renewable and uncovered. The pricing is slightly above the hydro portfolio that we currently have, and it is above the RMLD portfolio average with an escalator built in. But we are able to monetize the RECs that we're getting from these that will offset that cost.
I'm not familiar with Gravity, the name Gravity. Did they take over another facility that was being run by somebody else? How long is it?
Yeah, so they're buying generally like small hydro facilities around mostly in the Northeast, but some out in the western part of the country.
So is it a private equity firm?
They're like a private developer that are developing these assets, improving them, renewing licenses.
They're well established. So the RMLD's been working with them for probably 10 years. Probably the bigger project that we did 2 years ago was Tahoe. That's about 35,000 megawatts just by itself. So we've had ongoing discussions. The Wirewind one was a contract that was expiring last June. What we did is we decided to do with up to a 36-month extension while they were finishing the licensing. The licensing at that point in time wasn't complete with FERC. All the filing's been done. They were working through the fish passage, both upstream and downstream. That's expected at any point in time. So now that it's been backed up in the relicensing agencies, but it looks like it's going to come out here in the June timeframe. So it's the right time for us to transition from our interim to a formal contract going forward. So we're basically in the case of Wirewind, it's a renewal. But we also had year before last, we had done the Gravity Connecticut #5 project, which is on a different piece. We actually had finished already because that was also in the process. That relicensing is coming up in 2026. It's in a different phase of the relicensing. We actually have finished the environmental justice due diligence on that project. So if we do the due diligence, if we do the approval tonight, which we're requesting, we'll actually have the Wirewind go through. Although we've been buying from that project for 12 years now, per the policy we put together before, we'll do the environmental justice due diligence on that as well. The other thing, the reason why we put these two together, Gravity's been around for a while, stable, they know how to run operations, and just for, we're trying to really work on administrative efficiencies. So part of the goal here is to put the two together. The other things you've heard in the past on hydros, we want all of the output, depending on the size of it, but it'd be small, and we'll take all of it. It's just simpler for them, simpler for us. And the extent of it, 32 is kind of an odd number, but it rounds to be 55. So it's just the way the math worked for the modeling that we've done. We still have to finalize, and we've got pricing, the term sheets, et cetera. There'll be a little bit more back and forth on that pricing stuff. But they've been very good to work with in the past.
And they've been reliable over time, obviously.
Yeah, they're really strong. And they also, as you know, our daily dispatch and our daily reconciliation is administered currently through ENA, so they work very well with the ENA team as well. So
great.
Not to say there's nothing new here, but basically for all intents and purposes, it's a combination for all intents and purposes. And as we've talked about before, it's in our portfolio. We want to keep it in our portfolio. And as you guys also know unlike solar and wind arrays, there won't be any new hydro facilities in New England, so we wanna keep what we have.
Discussion, further discussion?
Given that this is an existing, it's, how long it's been there for decades, presumably?
Oh, both of these are, late 1800s. Yeah, the actual facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to go back,
But they're
it's been a long time, yeah.
So I'm just concerned, what does an environmental review even consist of, much less an environmental justice one for something that's been around for 80 or 100 years?
Well, it's still, basically, the key thing is, it looks like, it goes back several decades to see if there's been any protests or, is there any local environments, or any local, either agencies or town people or whatever. I mean, these are, unlike the Ho, which is in the middle of nowhere, this one's not quite in the middle of nowhere, it's not a fair statement, forgive me.
You mean environmental?
Lost that concept.
Environmental.
When you say environmental justice, you mean environmental?
Well, that's, well, we call it environmental review.
Yeah. I want to make sure.
But to make sure it's not in a place that is impacting the residents.
Right.
What's environmental justice to the fish?
Well, that's what Colleen used to say.
What kind of fish were
Yeah,
it?
Dave, we queued off, and this is exactly the discussion we had 2 years ago when we first put this in place.
Right, I looked at this like, wait, but I'm just, you mean environmental review?
It's primarily environmental review, yeah, it's primarily environmental, yeah. But we still, we spent we spent a little bit of money, we do a report, which is actually good. I mean, we're paying attention to it. Interesting enough, we put that in place, and the very first one we did was the HOA project, and then we did this one, and then the First Light ones. They actually appreciated the fact, because nobody else had requested those. Again, RMLD is a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of requesting these kind of things, so. It's good.
Got it. It was the terminology was throwing you off.
Yeah, no, it was a terminology that we kind of stumbled over, and then I think we just keep it right. So anyways, hope that helps.
Thanks.
Should I read the motion?
Yeah, you want to read the motion, John,
Sure.
please?
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners, contingent on the recommendation of the Citizens Advisory Board, vote to accept the general manager's recommendation to execute a new contract for energy and associated certificates from Gravity CT and Gravity Espanook Weir Wind Hydro Facilities. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Wirewind, yeah.
Wirewind, thank you. Contingent on appropriate environmental justice due diligence.
Okay, I'll second it. Can I just ask that we, just a friendly amendment to
Delete
the
justice.
word justice out of the motion, because it's not actually.
Could we delete justice and add number 5 to Connecticut? Just to be clear, okay.
That's number 5.
It's right behind Connecticut.
Oh,
It should say Connecticut number 5, it's planned number 5.
So the gravity.
Oh, Connecticut, Gravity Connecticut.
Gravity
Yeah,
Connecticut.
They call it CT, but
It's
it's
Connecticut.
a Connecticut number 5 plant.
Connecticut number 5, and then.
Yeah, so it should be, let me get, so we got Gravity Connecticut 5,
Number 5, just the
Number
pound
five.
sign,
Okay.
the pound sign 5.
and then we're removing the word justice.
Justice.
Should we putting in there review in the place?
No, very much.
No, it means, the meaning is environmental.
Environmental due diligence, okay, yeah, I'm fine. with that.
And then-
I will accept that as part of the main motion, okay? You know,
Just to clarify before you.
yeah, it's been seconded. We gave
I did
second.
so.
So we-
One clarification is that we will be meeting with the CAB next week. So there'll be we'll review it with them. So you're basically giving a conditional, okay, good, guys.
Meaning this vote to approve the contract condition on them.
On them,
I
okay.
see.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're going to try and do going forward is we're going to try and reschedule so that we do the CAB before the VOC, because there's not just this, but the CAB has the first recommendation, and then we'll bring it to you guys. 'Cause right now we're kind of backwards.
It's not
I
necessary.
remember, yeah.
That's right, that's under the 20 agreement, they have the first. they have the
Yeah,
first-
we agree. I just think in terms of the timing of, so we didn't coordinate the timing of the 2 meetings as well as this month, so anyways.
Move second, further discussion? I see none, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
I,
That passes 4-0. Okay, on to
Thank you.
general manager travel.
No. Oh, there's one last.
There's one last,
Oh, you have one last thing?
certificates, yeah. Just to give you an overview of the certificates that we took care of for the third quarter of 2022. There were about 55,000 certificates acquired in the third quarter. They were minted on January 15th, 2023. We had until today to sell them.
Or retire,
Yes.
but actually retire.
Yeah, and we're retiring 26% currently. That is in line with our goal of meeting the 2.5% per year to 2030.
And then just for clarity, 26% because of 2022, and then for the 2023 ones will be 29%, and we'll keep ratcheting up.
So the volume was up because we had increased load in the third quarter because it was very hot between July and September last year. And it also meant there were fewer RECs created because the hydro production was lower. So we did sell 80% of the certificates above the 26% that we sold. But we expect to make up for that in the fourth quarter RECs. We yielded about $130,000 from the sales. And so we will make up the balance in the fourth quarter. So we expect to get additional RECs. We won't have to retire as many because the load will be lower, and we will have created more because the REC generation will be higher.
So in effect, we're basically shooting toward the state compliance, so 50%, but as we put policy 30, we ratchet up, so same policy, same program. So we'll make sure we get the 26% for 2022, and then 29% for this year. Just report no vote, just.
Yeah, no, we're just staying right where we need to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
We don't want to go,
Well, we're ahead.
We're only returning.
From a compliance perspective, we're ahead.
So from a compliance perspective, but if you start looking at that monetarily, right, we could be in the, if we sit on, are we in the sweet spot? If we wait, I know we're creeping up, but as the financial and energy picture changed, we did a rate increase. It's the same thing happening in the rec market, where if we stood pat maybe in a certain amount, and I know we talked about moving upwards, do we start thinking about potentially a different strategy? Because when we first made our strategy, the entire world was a different place. So now is it appropriate for us to maybe pull that back and then say, okay, we sit on a lot of stuff because you might be sitting on a lot of revenue potentially. I don't know, that's why I'm asking that question. Do we force ourselves to maintain on that upper track, and do we slow that pace down?
Given the fact that the sales basically are applied against the fuel or the fuel portion, energy portion, because when we buy them with energy. So we basically, whatever we sell, we do that from it. Given the fact that so I think the question is great, and maybe what we do in the September, October timeframe, as you have a little bit of a picture of what we have an idea what 24 looks like, but as things become a little more clear, 2023, as we talked about before, the market there's volatility, but not like it was in 2022, and it's relatively flat as we talked about. So from that perspective, and the certificate value for this year are still, the class ones they're in the $36, $37 range. So they're relatively stable as well. We do need to make decisions each year. So we have until June 15th of each year to do something with the previous year certificates. So each quarter is at 6 month delay. So we have to either retire, sell, or forfeit. And we're never,
I know.
we don't want to forfeit because there's value there. So, so I think the question, for 2020, so I think the question's great. We'll do whatever. I think we'll take another look at it. But I think for 2023, we should, because things are relatively stable, we should kind of keep running where we are. And then maybe go back and look at our policy 30 and say, are there any adjustments that we need to make? I think it's a good question.
Yeah.
So we'll take that as an action item.
You're getting a call. Just want to make sure it's not an emergency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else under the reset?
No.
Okay, very good. On to the next item. It's the approval of the GM attendance at various places.
Right, there's 3 of them here.
Three of them, yeah.
So we'll do each one independently?
Yes, we each one dependent, please.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve Greg Phipps' travel to and attendance at the transmission and distribution summit to take place on May 1st through 3rd, 2023 at the Encore Boston Harbor in Boston, Massachusetts.
You want to give us some background here?
Yeah, so,
What this does and what the benefit to the RMLD is.
Yeah, so, at the end of the day, I attended this last year with me. You know, it's
good,
very good. It's a half day, full day, half day. It's local. You know, the elements that are particularly interesting from this year's, last year was very productive, both in terms of the sessions, but also in terms of the contacts, et cetera. On that first page, there's a couple of, you know, the key threads that are relevant to us: the sustainability and building decarbonization, resiliency strategies, flexible loads, and energy storage. Some of the other stuff I'm not particularly interested in, but I think those three are relevant. And there's people from across the country that come. So it was very inexpensive. You know, last year I didn't, you know, I think I stayed one of the nights last year. So it's close. The topics are very relevant. It's well run. So we've done it in the past, and we should continue doing it. So that's the request on that.
All the key players that there.
Yeah.
From all over the country.
Yeah.
Really, you know, it'd be good to.
Are they at the skateboard area?
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that they put it in the, you know, but it was really nice location too. They
Yeah, it
had
was
conferences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Any
It's
discussion?
local.
Any discussion? I see none, all in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, that motion carries.
Need a second?
Oh, second.
I think Bob seconded.
Bob seconded.
That's perfect. Great question.
Okay, second one is move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve Greg Phipps' travel to and attendance at the Northeast Public Power Association's, that's NEPA, 2023. Is that rodeo?
Rodeo.
Rodeo. It's a rodeo. You live in rodeo.
Right.
Okay. Rodeo conference and expo to take place on May 9th through 11th, 2023 at the Common Man Inn in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Tell us about
Yeah,
this one.
so this is an annual event that we go to regularly.
Right.
You know, for me and some of the other members will probably attend. I need approval to attend. You know, again, given the GM needs approval to attend. But it is always, it is a good education, learning, networking with the rest of the GMs.
Right.
So, you know, this is a different, it's not the annual conference. It's mainly targeted toward the E&O team, engineering operations team. So, I've gone to it in the past.
It's very good,
I don't know, 6 years.
Yeah.
But now I need approval to go this year.
Do we have a team?
No, we're not doing the, no, this is.
I'm not expecting you guys to climb
No,
up. No, yeah, you guys don't have to climb up and climb down.
But there is.
Oh, there is.
You're gonna have people, the linemen that they go there, and that's
Well,
that's
we haven't done-
that's
we haven't
one of
done
the,
too lately.
one of the tools for recruiting the good, you know.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know, you had a team, that's next to one.
It's a real question.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not.
There's an agenda behind it.
I do horseback
I
really
think
well.
it's very, but not.
Barrel racing.
Further discussion?
You have a second on it?
Bob seconded. I heard Bob second. All those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries 4-0.
Okay, the next one, move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve Greg Phipps' travel to and attendance at the 2023 American Public Power Association, that's APPA, National Conference to take place on June 16th through the 21st, 2023 at the Seattle Convention Center in Seattle, Washington.
So this is an annual APPA conference. I went to, obviously, 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, I went to the legislative rally in DC. APPA does a lot. So APPA is a very valuable entity. There's a lot of learning. There's a bunch of sessions here that I went through the agenda that I think would be worthwhile. To be honest, I'm still on the fence if I will actually make the trip, but I want approval to have the option to make the trip. You know, I think we as an organization are going to get more closely plugged into APPA because of the resources and the training, and the value that they bring. And we subscribe, we are members of them already, so we are gonna start getting more value out of them. This would be one mechanism. We do other APPA training courses throughout the organization.
Right.
But, I would like permission to go to it. I'm probably 80% likely to go, but I want to get permission now, so I have the option to do that if we can dig into it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, in the past, also commissioners have gone to this.
Yeah.
Commissioners
Is that
can
right?
go to this, yes.
Yeah, commissioners are welcome.
Commissioner Sullivan, when he was on the board here, he did attend this.
I didn't realize.
And he found it very useful.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff here, so.
Yeah, so. It was a better-
I personally think it's great to get out and meet these other people, just find out what's going on
You
in the
learn.
industry and, yeah.
That's why, we sent, two of the engineers out to the district,
Distributed.
which is where we learned a whole bunch of stuff, partially what are other people doing, partially what new technology is coming in. And I think back to your point, John, there's so much going on in the industry, right? I mean, as we've talked about many times, this industry is in massive transition. And, while we're smart guys, men and women, we don't have all the answers. So we want to learn as much as we can from what other people are doing. And APPA, it's a national organization, but there's a concentration of people willing to share and learn. So that's the thought process, right? So I'd like permission to go.
Yeah, one quick question.
Yeah, sure.
You have the NEPA and the APPA. Like, structurally wise, what's the
Connection.
relationship between those two? They're not competitors.
No.
But, yeah, I'm just.
Nepa's New England.
Yeah, so it's just a regional one.
Yeah, it's a regional one, and, some of the other, general managers and leaders of NEPA are actually on some of the committees, et cetera, for the APPA. APPA is national. And NEPA doesn't, they don't take strong stands on the lobby, on the policies and lobby stuff, except through APPA, like we did a week and a half ago. NEPA is more, I'll call it more operational and training. So one of the strong things that NEPA does is a training organization. They have a school out in Littleton. So apprentice training, meter tech training, APPA is classroom type training as opposed to the NEPA stuff, which is, like literally in their yard, they've got 18 poles and, literally it's hands-on training in NEPA. But they're related, but regional training.
I don't recall, this coming up before the APPA conference attendance. You guys
Yeah.
remember?
We are. I go this year to engineering and operation conference. Usually they have that, every year. So we go and all the, people, key players, again, from all over the country, they come and, expand, with the various.
GMs. Only-
Which wasn't,
She didn't, she didn't go, but other GMs
Oh, yeah,
often go.
very much so, yeah.
Other
I'm
GMs
just getting
here,
the sales along.
previous GMs have gone from here.
Some of the other GMs.
They're very valuable, yeah.
I'd rather be in Boston personally, but
Yeah.
that's a good topic.
Yeah, because between this and the August NEPA and the other NEPA and the legislative rally, I just wonder how much of this is redundant.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I know, and, time's valuable, Dave. Dollars are valuable, but time's probably more valuable, so, that's why the agenda looks interesting. I'm 80% likely to go. Seattle is not a, it's not a hop, skip, and a jump down the road.
No.
Not that it's a big deal, but, obviously travels on my time only. So,
Great flights too, out of Alaska Air from
That's
here to
true.
Boston.
yeah, Boston.
Yeah, I took one the other day, it was like $65. It was amazing.
$65?
Yes.
You get to Seattle,
Yeah.
book them now.
They get to sit down.
You can't get the Boston for
I
saying.
know. Exactly.
Well, parking $45.
It was pretty amazing.
Wow. That's the request.
Okay, very good. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 4-0.
Can we get a second?
Bob seconded.
And again, I don't know what's going on.
Okay, general manager report.
Yeah.
To report. Record close.
So what I'm gonna try and do is, as you saw from the email, is in between the weeks, kind of give you guys a little more update, because it'll be a little more efficient with time. I'm trying to keep this week's normal session more compressed, so we have time for next topic on the executive session. In terms of key things, I think overall, one of the things that's really important from the leadership perspective is the mood of the team. I think we've talked before, the mood of the team seems to be very strong. Everybody is, content, happy, working hard, challenged. As we do recruiting of new individuals, we talk about this place as being energized. We use that word with a bit of humor, but I mean, literally it's energized that there's a lot happening here. We're trying to change, trying to create the new utility in the context of the new world here. So overall things are very positive. I think throughout the organization. The line team is fully staffed at this point in time. Everybody's running pretty well. So in terms of the support teams, you've heard from Sarah a few times in terms of HR. She's energetic in terms of the recruiting, in terms of the HR, so she's been a great addition. As you saw from the notes, the director of finance, I'm not supposed to use names, so the director of finance is working diligently. We have an audit coming up next week, the annual audit, so we prepared for that. He also has been driving with support from Hamid and from here, so it's okay, from Hamid and Bill, support for some of the grants. You got those in the notes already. In terms of the IRG team is finally filling out, which is great. We've got a couple of key leadership positions to do underneath Hamid and the E&O group, and those are challenging to fill. We got two key positions there, leadership positions that we're working diligently to fill. But I think from a personnel perspective, the court hiring is settled down. We did reestablish last year, as you guys know, the summer intern program. So we're looking to do 4 more interns. We have offered out to 2 of them. They'll be here 10 weeks. We've now kind of got replugged in with Northeast, with several of the schools, Northeastern, WPI, as well as Merrimack, UMass Lowell. So we've got some nice candidates coming in that we're also looking to do a more traditional co-op program. So we are in the process of reestablishing that. That was actually, Bill probably remembers, but back in the 80s and early 90s, but the co-op program was pretty strong. And there were several individuals that retired over the past couple of years that I know of that actually came through the co-op program. So I think that's actually a good source of talent for the organization. That's personnel update. Other quick update, customer surveys. So the initial, the surveying is complete. They're putting together some of the slides. The results and analysis, we asked them to do some more detailed stuff. So that'll be, I'll have Julie present that at the April meeting. We spent time internally. We have input from Commissioner Talbot in terms of the questions. We got better results. Not perfect, but definitely better than last time through. I mean, we haven't seen all the stuff yet, but just preliminary discussion. So that's in process. We are in terms of, as you guys saw, right? Not only did we implement the 2023 rates March 1st. You guys saw the numbers, again, primarily driven by power supply were lower, so that was really good news. But we are preparing to be able to implement green communities charge just for Reading customers. So there's a little work we're still doing on the billing system to be able to do that. There's some work being done between the Renewable Trust, the state level, and the DOER. Those 2 agencies need to work together to make the whole program work. Again, our role is purely administration of the collection and then transferring those dollars off to the Renewable Trust. So there's some work that's being done between there, the town of Reading and RMLD. The 2 of us in particular are staying closely aligned. So probably May timeframe. Again, we're trying to make sure that we're not the slow down piece. We still have work to do on the billing side, but hopefully that our work on that will be taken care of. On that note, we are in the middle of an upgrade of our billing system, the Cogsdale system. So it had fallen a couple of revs behind. So our director of IT is making sure that that gets updated, and that's what's happened at the end of this month. It'll be a good time in between our billing periods. And then, on that note, we've been working diligently, again, looking outside, for time of use. So, taking the feedback you guys gave us, last time relative to the EV1, A3 rates, and I'm thinking a little bit, more broadly. So, we've been working with the, New Hampshire Electric Cooperative, it's something they call a transactive. It has the ability to do hourly rates. It's a kind of different model, so we're looking at that in terms of how to implement it, and particularly in the context of the billing system, how we actually implement with the billing system. We sent out the bids for the MDM system. And we'll be reporting back on that hopefully in the April meeting. The bids came back in today.
Today.
Came back in today. But that MDM system, given the limitations of our Cogswell system, we'll probably have to do some of that creative time of use, a little more comprehensive time of use stuff through the MDM system. We still want to get it in place this year. I'm like massive supporter of making it work. So we're trying to work the implementation on that. And then, and those are the I think the key updates relative to what's happening at RMLD. I think the last piece is we continue to, we'll talk about one executive session, but from a strategic perspective, remember our charter is reliable, low cost, non-carbon. We're going to try and play around with the word low cost. I think it works, but that doesn't mean cheap. It means competitively priced, however you want to say it. Anyways, in that context, as you know, we are trying to look for opportunities and partnerships with companies that have creative solutions to within territory generation. So there's some work on hydrogen. Again, it's exploratory, but we've learned that with Bill's connections, et cetera, we've had a couple of recent discussions that might bear some fruit for one of our substation areas. And then we continue to, we're trying to accelerate the discussions we've had with some of the storage companies, the long duration storage companies, the 100-hour and the 10-hour storage companies, one of the ones you guys happen to see at the NEPR conference. So those discussions, we have another follow discussion next Monday. They're trying to turn that into, again, it won't be implemented until the end of 2024, but there's a lot of work to be done between now and then in terms of how to make all that stuff happen. So there's a lot of work being done, and just continued motion that we've been talking about on a regular basis within territory generation storage systems in the context of trying to keep stability on prices, most importantly, keep the reliability. We are not doom and gloom type folks, but the regional network, there's a fragility to it right now. That's probably going to increase with the closure of the Mystic. There's a roughly 1,600 megawatt facility in Boston, the Mystic system that is absolutely going to close May of 2024. It is next to a LNG port that without this Mystic River, the financials of the LNG port aren't sustainable, and the current owners, so there's a question in terms of how long that survives, that LNG facility. It's called the Everett Terminal. And if the Everett Terminal gets closed, it has a lot of implications on the natural gas infrastructure. We are not a natural gas company, obviously, but as you guys remember,
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Well, we're indirectly. No, we are. We're a consumer of natural gas.
We are.
Massive consumer of
We
natural
are a consumer of natural gas.
gas. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we are a consumer of natural gas, so it will, as we mentioned, we're not direct distribution company, but 50% of the regional generation comes from natural gas. So there's a whole series of steps, and what we are trying to do, again, part of the reason why we had sent out those, as we talked about before, the storage systems across our, spread across our territory. We got those bids back. We're evaluating those bids. Probably do a refinement round going back out. But the intention is in 2024 to add some additional, in addition to the Fordham Road one we've already talked about, to add some additional, we've talked about these in the past, but that path continues down the road. So there's a lot of work we're trying to get done in the next 18 months from the the IRD team and the ENO team working together to try and get not generation, but storage of our territory, because that's quick building blocks. If we do that right, as we anticipate, that might allow us to accommodate any request that, I should say any, most requests that ISO New England would have for load reduction, which in the past, and hasn't been called in the past, but it would normally be done by rolling blackouts. Our intention is to put equipment and capability in place so that we don't have to do that. And the equipment would be paid for by the VGA doing transmission and capacity stuff. So we're trying to work through the business model so that we hit our core goals of reliable, low cost and non-carbon, and reliable being number one. So that's kind of the big picture background and stuff that's percolating on the road. But overall, the team, back to my very first point, the team is energized, I think, in the organization. I think if you were to touch base with, walk through the op on any given day, there's an optimism and encouragement. Hey, we're doing stuff that's worthwhile. So that's the general manager report.
Just one question for you.
Yes, sir.
Are we affected by anything with the Silicon Valley Bank and the Signature Bank collapses?
No.
Whether with the suppliers or anything that you're aware of?
So I haven't looked at the suppliers. But nothing that we've been alerted to. Yeah, on the supplier side, I haven't looked at that.
I have just a question or two. Cybersecurity, anything new or different on that?
No, we continue. So the director of IT, you met him back in January. He is diligent. We've migrated to multi-factor authentication. So when you log into your systems, you have to have a second item. We've increased our password lengths to 14 characters.
Oh, joy.
But it's interesting. He
That's
actually,
phrase,
yeah, oh joy, yeah, right. But
I'm thinking more in terms of shotgun shells that are.
oh, you think, well, physical security. Yeah. So no, we did back in December, we increased the rounds. We've alerted the various police departments to make sure that our substations, in particular Substation 3 and the two, Substation 4 and Substation 5, but just more awareness from the police. We haven't done, we're in the process of updating the security, the remote camera security system that's not in place. And we're looking at doing some screening, particularly on Substation 4. Again, it's harder, if you can't see yet. When I say screen, like you see at a tennis court, screening.
So, just a quick question, this home security systems, which I'm familiar with, includes ultrasonics and other things for, near term, if someone's walking up to it, you can detect that they're there. Do we have anything like that in place? And I understand just police got presence and.
Be careful.
Yes.
Be careful with that.
Yes.
Be
Thank
careful
you.
with that question.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Now, Ben has been some grants, did he not, requests?
Ben,
Did he submit some grant proposals for security?
Yeah. So one of those first 3 grants, but I think the question is near-term stuff, so we've made a lot of things
Their
near-term.
grants are longer term, they're not, the status.
So where we are with all those grants, again, a good addition to the team, but we've done 3 conceptual papers, all 3 of them have been quote unquote approved, which basically means we've been invited to submit a follow-up. In fact, this week, we're going to be submitting the first one of the actual submission, which is for the grid modernization. And the proposed budget is $20 million, and we're asking for a $10 million grant. So we've got, this was the one where I think I mentioned in the letter, our 2 senators and congressman basically signed a letter of support. I'm actually going to ask before you guys tonight, because you guys are elected officials, I know you guys are appointed on the CAD, but in any kind of case of elected, it's valuable to have additional support. So I've got a letter of support I'd love you guys to sign tonight so we can include it with the package. They realize that you guys are commissioners, but the fact that you are elected commissioners puts a different spin on it. It's not critical, but it just helps our application. And then we're going to send that in literally tomorrow. So
Because we vote.
because you vote and you voted in. Exactly right. Yeah.
I have one last question, and
Yes, sir.
I don't expect you to answer it tonight. but
Okay.
I've raised it in the past, and that's that in terms of our money that is being invested from RMLD, and I realize that it's part of Reading and whatnot, but it's pretty substantial.
Yep.
Do we have in place things like bond ladders to produce significantly more than what a typical bank would give you? And the reason I bring it up,
Good.
I'll reiterate it.
Yeah.
Is I'm part of an organization that we had money in the bank, which was paying 0 interest, 0.1% or whatever. We took $2 million and we put it into a bond ladder at Fidelity, treasury bonds, by the way, so they're all protected by the federal government.
Yep.
And we're realizing $100,000 a year off of that. Well, we've got 10 times as much, and we can generate $1 million a year. Why aren't we doing that?
So, that request was heard and we are in the process of doing that.
Thank you.
So, yep, in process.
Okay, I need to hear.
Yep, good. And I think on that same note, the other thing that we're doing differently this year, which is another source of funds to the tune of almost $500,000, is applying for PTF, basically being reimbursed for our PT. So our substations are tied to the transmission system.
Oh,
And we have the right to submit for reimbursement. We have not been doing that historically, but we did a little bit of it last year,
Yeah.
2022, based on the work that we did at the end of 2021. But we're very active in terms of making that, so that is, that's in the range of $500,000 that we're getting reimbursed for that we had in the past. So similar idea.
Yes, absolutely, fantastic.
I think all of these elements, go back to the basic concept of how do we, in the context of additional investments to handle the electrification that's coming down the road, part of it compliant driven, part of it is we want more revenue from additional customers. How do we pay for that besides, straight repair money?
Right.
So the grant stuff, the different programs like the PTF, I think, as you mentioned before, that one's in process as well. So there's several different areas where we're trying to uncover alternate funding to allow us to continue to provide the reliable, low cost, non-carbon service that our customers expect.
Just take it.
Go ahead. One question goes back to what Dave said when you were talking about metering.
Yeah.
So new metering systems and time of use rate, right? They all tie into, how am I gonna collect that data? How am I gonna implement that bill? Very complex.
Correct.
So I think, like anything, you have a great idea, but implementation of the idea can be an immense amount of money versus the savings that you're gonna get back from, or revenue generation that you think you're gonna get from it.
Mm.
So before we get rates and these new meters and everything comes in, it's just, all that information has to be collected, regurgitated, and then you can turn around and then say, all right, maybe I can implement the time of use rate. I just don't know how good that data collection system is currently, or if it even exists out there. I mean, to get some information back on the meters, but if you're gonna get all this new information back, now, how's that all getting aggregated? How's it all coming back?
They're all coming to MDM. That's why we gave the MDM.
So
So
how's that,
MDM is gonna be the housing for all the metering data.
is it all cellular coming back? Is it all, that signal coming back? How is that information being delivered back to us?
That's gonna be, that's a good question. That's a mesh network, fixed mesh network,
Yeah,
which is gonna be all, the good thing, the good investment that we have is as a reliable backhaul, is the fiber loop. So fiber loop, everything, we got 2 tubes. There are 12 strands in each, so 24 strands that go into all the substations and also key locations in all 4 towns for the distribution automations. So what we do, we're going to create the mesh, and wherever that we have these switches that they convert back to from the radio signal back to fiber signal.
Yep.
So they bring that information back to the fiber. So that's the main route for that. However, beside that, also through the satellite, obviously these mesh network, they're going to bring the information back. We just did a radio study for distribution automation, which is using the cellular mesh network. And these are we just tried actually one of the remote areas, and the information just came in within a matter of seconds. So, and we couldn't have even established the communication to that location. So we have a plan for coverage, radio coverage, cellular mesh network coverage. So
it's drive-by now?
no, it's not drive-by. We have, right now, it's actually AMR system. That's, 1.5 fixed network that, they go from meter to meter to meter to a ECU, we call it data collector. And data collector is connected to the fiber that brings the information back for processing to the office over here. So that's how it's being.
Yeah, and I think, Commissioner, I think your reminder of, so it's great to collect the data. What do you do with, so there's the meter data, there's the consolidated, and someplace internally, there's the analysis of it, and then what do we do with it? So.
In the hall back is.
Right.
Very, very
I mean, well, that's just one piece, but remember, that's just one piece of it. At the end of the day, even if we just haul it back, so we actually, on one of our systems, we have two AMR type systems right now. One of them we collect data and analyze it yet. So one of the things we're trying to do right now is in the IRD team, is one of these new analysts is basically working on the data. Because remember the circle that Bill showed us, it starts with the forecast, right? So, the forecast is driven partly on what is the behavior, we're trying to dig deeper into it because it's great to do an annual forecast that, hey, it's gonna grow 1.25% per year, what it look like. But, what segments are growing, what's the behavior, is part of the reason why, we'll talk more about load growth relative to the industrials in particular, right? And where they're coming from, and then what's going on with the fleet on the EV. So all these different pieces, you're exactly right. We have, what's the value to the customer? And I think for us, the value we'll put more detail behind it, but the value to the customer is to have a better sense of what their load profile is going to look like going forward. And then equally important, back to the power supply piece, because power supply is now intermittent. Historically, it was on peak, off peak, and weekends, right? And whatever you wanted during those 3 blocks, you got it, you bought it, no big deal. As our portfolio becomes more and more intermittent, more dominant with wind, solar, and hydro, we've got to think differently in terms of how to match the supply side with the load side, or let me say differently, the load side. Which one comes first is kind of a question, because if it's, the load's going to be here, how do we influence load? And that goes back to the transactive, the time of use rates, because we want to let people adjust their behavior in terms of how they use, particularly as our load's going to double, right? With the electrification of EVs and air source heat pumps, among others.
So we get the concepts. I think Bob's got a good point of, if you're not collecting real-time data now, or it's not relatively easy to do it, and it's a gigantic millions of dollars to do it, then we need a cost benefit before we start doing any fancy rates that would rely on something that we don't have. I thought we already had the data. I thought we already
you have some, but it's not.
Yeah, so there's a couple key pieces you mentioned there. So we do have interval data from all the meters, or almost all the meters, right? We have interval data, but right now
15-minute or hour?
Hourly. Well, some of them are 15. I mean, it depends. The commercial ones are 15-minute. Some of the commercial and some of the industrial ones are even 5-minute. But the residentials are hourly. But right now, we don't have a way to get it back to that data back to us to analyze it. So that's why the first thing that we did when we even started looking at this a year ago was the MDM system. So we can actually start using the data. And that's several $100,000 investment, but we put it in the budget. We're working on it. We've got the bids coming back. But I think your comment is well spoken. The other,
you have hourly data from residential, 15 from industrial, and 5 from
some
heavy.
Some
that I wasn't clear on.
Yeah. But we're not doing much with that data right now. So we build. Back to your point. It is a complex piece, right? And mapping the data flows, which we've done. Obviously, you want to make sure the billing's done properly, but we're trying to move into a different world, as opposed to, hey, it's 14 cents a kilowatt hour.
We all want the cost benefit.
Yeah, fine.
There are 3 main functionalities to let Greg explain to the MDM.
Yeah.
And the MDM as a housing for the metering. The one major one being for the data analytics. Because when you have that data coming in, you can analyze them and forecast the load better, and set up your contracts that way. The second one is the VEE, that's validation, estimation, and editing. So if you're missing data, if let's say one collector is not working, or you have a missing interval data, so you can estimate those and come up with a better, prediction. And the last one being for demand response and or DSM, demand side management program. So all of these programs, they're doable for implementation to MDM. So that's going to give you, that's a critical tool for implementing all of those, functionalities that we need that we don't have right now. So if we have that, there's going to be tremendous benefit for the community, for everybody, save money, and also helping us to predict better the future behaviors, so we can set up the contracts accordingly to save money.
I have one other question on your presentation, which was you, general manager. I just want to make sure I understand the green communities piece, because it's been a long running and complicated thing. Do I understand correctly? It's all a done deal except for the administrative piece of RMLD doing this?
No.
No. What's the action point? Do we have to take action, or is there an action?
We just need to make sure our billing system is ready.
Yeah.
Between the town of Reading, the Renewable Trust, and DOER, they need to get their stuff coordinated.
Okay.
We'll be part of that, but we are not slowing the process down. It is not, we are not the linchpin right now. The linchpin is between Renewable Trust and DOER.
Okay.
And then the town.
So we don't have to vote on anything?
No, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing.
We just.
There's not a rate piece that we have to vote on.
Right, yeah, no, and it doesn't, because it's not our rate. I mean, there's no rate for us to do, I mean, literally, we are a transaction manager. We collect them forward.
And at a high level, the rough collection from the town overall out of this will be roughly what, and then what do we think is coming back to the town from it from?
So the rough estimate for the town of Reading, given the current kilowatt hour usage, it's about $60,000 a year will be collected and sent on to the Renewable Trust. My understanding of the program is that when they first initiate the program, once all this paperwork is done, et cetera, they are eligible for somewhere in the range of a $250,000 grant, and then they can do additional grants on top of that. I believe they have to apply for that first $250,000, but typically that's what most towns get. So that's an order of magnitude.
In the first year or in
first, I believe in the first year, the first 12 months, yeah. Now, there are targets and goals that the Green Communities Program requires.
I understand about that. I'm just trying to get that sense of the dollars. Like,
Yeah.
What's the outflow and
picture.
the inflow?
It flows about 60, so just for town of Reading, about $60,000, and the inflow is potentially $250,000 in the first period, and then additional projects beyond that. And we will, and in the context that we mentioned before, we will, where appropriate, we will do joint applications with the town of Reading and RMLD. Joint applications tend to get more likely to be approved in terms of grant applications where there's more than one entity. And while we're a little bit unique because we're serving 4 towns, so but it's
Couple Teslas.
There you go.
it's
Another question?
It is.
Another question before we move into executive session. Just quickly, just I want to point out the subsequent meeting schedule. Our next meeting will be in April the 19th. And then there's the chart as to who's covering the AP and the payroll and the member who's going to cover the CAB. I think Marlene is possibly on the up there from what I can see. So
I am.
Okay, maybe I'll turn. You can take over when we get to executive session. Okay.
You can.
Let me finish down here. Okay. Do I have? John, you want to make a motion for executive session?
Sure, it's like a long motion. Okay. Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners go into executive session pursuant to Massachusetts GL, Chapter 164, Section 47D, exemption from public records and open meeting requirements in certain instances, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property relative to Maple Meadow in Wilmington. If the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, to approve the March 24th, 2022, April 29th, 2022, and May 3rd, 2022 executive session meeting minutes, to approve approve the release of the January 30th, 2013, March 27th, 2013, April 24th, 2013, May 29th, 2013, August 14th, 2013, September 25th, 2013, and December 12th, 2013 executive session meeting minutes and return to regular session for the sole purpose of adjournment. Note, roll call vote required.
Is that second? Hope seconds it. Mr. Pacino, aye.
Mr. Sternbeck, aye?
Mr. Bolton, aye.
All right.
Mr. Talbot, aye. We are
Marley?
moving into session. Okay.
Marlena, I'm gonna end this and do another one.
Log out,
Okay.
log back in.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.